Welcome to G42 on Air. As AI and advanced technology scale at lightning speed, this podcast series brings us face to face with the change makers shaping our future. Take your front row seat with me, Amandeep, as we ask how these powerful new technologies are created, how they're transforming our world, and what's coming next. In today's episode, we're exploring the role of AI in modern urbanization and smart cities. And joining me here in the studio to help understand all this technology is Martin Yates, Government Technology Advisor of Presight. Martin, I introduced you with your Presight hat on, but let's just go a little bit further back because, of course, smart cities and you go further back.
Yeah, thanks for that, and thanks for the introduction to talk about smart cities. Yes, so going a little bit further back, I was the CTO of Dell Technologies, looking after smart cities, and we were helping governments and cities around the world do deployments to make their infrastructure smarter, better, and make their cities much more livable. So yes, absolutely. And it's absolutely great now that I've moved into the G42 group, previously Core 42, and now here in Presight leading the smart cities. So lots of great things to share.
So Martin, you really are the right person to have here in our hot seat when we talk about urban planning and some of the challenges that need to be addressed.
Yeah, absolutely. And so a long time ago, someone said to me, is smart cities a necessity or a luxury? And I think time has now shown that the stress on cities worldwide means that it has become a necessity. I mean, if you think about some examples like 70% of all the world's population will be moving into cities. And if you're a city leader or a mayor, you have a big headache because how do you deal with all that strain on your system? You can look in any number of cities in the world and see how much traffic is on the road and the loss of productivity through hours and hours of sitting through traffic. And naturally comes with that, how do I manage pollutions that are created from this? How do I keep my citizens more happy? How do I do job creations in a city? It has to be a wonderful city, because if it's not a wonderful city, people won't come and live there, and jobs won't be created there. So any number of situations calls and force city leadership to really invest heavily in smart cities.
And from your global experience, are these quite universal issues?
Yeah, absolutely. They're always, I would say there's always a trend that I'm seeing is, one is, do I understand what's happening in my city, what's happening now, and can I be a bit more smarter and predictive so that I don't always have to wait for the problem to occur? I can actually anticipate ahead, and, technology definitely has to sort of help that.
And so you say technology has to help that. Let's break that down. What do we mean by that?
That's a good question. There's a lot to break down in a smart cities. I mean, I think probably the most important thing that I've learned is that data is the core to being able to make smarter, better decisions. Data in real time, this is what's happening now, and both data to be much more predictive. And so all the technology we need to build smarter cities is available today. We have the cloud computing, we have sovereign cloud computing, we have artificial intelligence engines, we have Internet of Things, IoT, and that's growing, from millions to billions of sensors, which is collecting information all across the city. So the ability now to bring all those pieces together, is essentially, that is the breakdown of, if I can't bring all these pieces together, I can't make proper decisions. And, recently you've seen with AI, AI is brilliant, but if you don't give it good data, it gets hallucinations, you get all sorts of spurious sort of answers, and you don't get better decision making and planning for the city.
So what are some of the solutions to mitigate against that?
There are numerous solutions. For me, primarily, it is around what is the methodology of collecting data. So if you think about traffic light signals, if you think about car parks, you think about buildings that need to be smarter, if you think about smart meters and smart gas and lighting and management of streets and services, the solution, there's hundreds of solutions that need to address that. But ultimately, if you cannot bring that into a solutions framework, into a data sharing framework, you never really get a smart city. You get a siloed city, but you don't really get a smart city.
And so tell me about where Presight comes into this equation.
Presight is having all of the solutions necessary, both ourselves, that we've engineered ourselves here in the UAE, and with our global partner network as well. So, and as I mentioned earlier, there can be hundreds of different use cases that need to be addressed. What we believe in Presight is, most of all, is consolidation of that data and then applying our own artificial intelligence to that to make sense of what we're seeing. And so not only are we looking at past data, what happened in the past in a city or within a government situation, but what's happening right now. I can read that using AI real time, so I don't have to wait for it to be trained. I can actually start acting on results. AI is jumping in there and saying, I see this happening, and this is what I'm recommending that you should do. So that's so much smarter, so much more cost efficient, and the benefits are tremendous to be able to have that approach and methodology to running cities smart.
So consolidation of data, data analytics, and that kind of real-time information sharing. Give us some real-world examples of where we can see this happening.
Well, yeah, and there are so many. So one of the most important, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, was the traffic congestions. And wherever you go in the world, there's lots of queues, right? And to be able to use technology to see how are the traffic queues forming. What do we understand about why things get congested? Is it that the signals, and I'm sure you've shared the experiences where you're sat at a red light and there's nothing on the other side, and you go, well, if you just let me go. So you need to go from what I call this kind of egg timer approach to traffic light system and to signaling and traffic management to more reactive and to more proactive signaling. So looking at how the queues and junctions build up traffic, and then actively changing the signaling reactively to allow traffic to flow more smoothly. But that has to be connected from junction to junction to junction. Otherwise, you'll end up with a bottleneck somewhere else. So traffic management is probably one of the big ones for us that we see. People want to certainly solve that, and AI certainly jumps in there. But AI has so many other areas as well. So, for example, we can pick up on the fact that many citizens might be complaining about a certain government service. So we can pick that up through ChatGPT sessions where talk to your city mayor. So we can build intelligence to talk to your city. And this is what we have on display at Presight. Ask my city a question. And that's both for citizens and administrators of the city. And you're going to see so much more of that going forward, the city becomes a living ecosystem that you can interact with through AI to get better results. Ultimately, you end up with a much more livable city where people are more happy.
And that's the goal, much more livable cities where people are happy. Now, you mentioned going forward, you're going to see more AI-driven solutions. Let's explore. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so picking up on the traffic, but AI-driven solutions occur everywhere. So first of all, I mentioned a little bit earlier about how sensors pick up information. It can be air quality sensors, it can be signaling, car parks, traffic flows, any number of different areas. So bringing all those pieces together, making sense of that, and delivering an outcome that those citizens are looking for is really paramount to that.
And is this the right place to bring up digital twin city technology?
Yeah, thanks that you've got that. That's exactly, that's a good question. So, we talk about smart cities, and they're very sensor-based and they're very command-based. So you can see you have the classic sort of view, like a 2D map. And sometimes it can be a 3D map to understand, to get that situational awareness of what's really happening. But digital twins goes to the next level. So like from a map we've seen for our various different map applications, you can see a picture of a building. But now imagine saying, how much is that building using, how much electricity is being used? How much water is being used? What is the emissions, the carbon footprint of that building? And so through different sensors, so essentially what you're doing is you're lighting up the information that comes out of infrastructures, right? And this is absolutely essential. So when you go beyond a map and you build a building into a twin, it's a replica of the analog world. And so it can be replicas of vehicles, replicas of buildings, replicas of highways, replicas of traffic, replicas of waste management.
And essentially a replica of the whole city.
A replica of the whole city. So what can you do with that? So when you've collected that data, you're logging that data. So I can see what's happened in the past. I can see the trends there. I've got real information from real buildings to real infrastructure. But what's the coolest part is, let's say we talked a little bit earlier about the strain on infrastructure, people coming into the city. So if I dial up now and I say, okay, in this city now, I can predict that 100,000 people will move to here, I can simply turn a dial and say, when I add 100,000 people to this city, what does that mean in terms of infrastructure strain? Do I need to provide more water? Do I need to provide more schools? Do I need to provide, better supplies of electricity? Any number of different factors. When you change the human dynamics, we need to change. So we can test that out. Now, what cities done in the past is they tend to say, well, I think we need to build one of those, or I think we need to expand this. But when they finally do it, it doesn't deliver the results. So imagine at almost $0, you could actually try stuff out, test and prototype without building it for real, and simulate that whole environment. And then when it works perfectly using artificial intelligence, you can see that, you say, then I'll go out and build that building with confidence. And that's essentially a digital twin, to be able to build, from analog world into the digital world, build and test and simulate with confidence. And you need to do that because you need to be cost efficient. The money doesn't grow on trees, and as a city leaders, we all know that. So digital twin is the answer pretty much to everything. And you will see digital twin of pretty much everything in the future. And that doesn't just apply to cities, that applies to factories, that applies to whole environments. It could apply to forests, it could apply to any area you can imagine. Anything that lives in the analog world can turn into a digital twin.
And that's a very compelling argument you make there, that with zero investment, you can experiment digitally and actually on a micro level and a macro level as well. When it comes to digital twin technology, where could we see in real time it's being used the most in the world?
Yeah, so digital twin technologies have been quite used already heavily in manufacturing, but now we've seen that evolution and move towards digital twin cities. So some prime examples, my country is actually Singapore, and we were one of the first countries to implement a digital twin Singapore. So we have a digital Singapore. And again, all the advantages that we talked about allowed us to simulate. So Singapore is probably be one of the world ranked leaders in terms of using digital twins. I think everyone is somehow now figuring out that digital twins important. And here we are right here in the UAE, and I'm coming from Abu Dhabi, and already you can see tremendous strides and advancements in digital twin for Abu Dhabi. And it's absolutely amazing. You have the whole city, you can render, you can go inside the buildings, you can look at consumptions, you can look at environmental factors, road traffic flows, and people are going to add more and more information to that so it becomes more rich, as therefore it means you get better planning and better outcomes.
Martin, you mentioned environmental factors there. Sustainability has got to be central to what you're doing.
Absolutely. So we put, at the forefront, when we look at the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SG11 is one of those ones which talk about making cities smarter and more energy efficient. And it also talks about climate change, so the effect. So when we build smarter, when we use less energy in buildings, the carbon footprint goes down. When we use water more efficiently, when we use heating and cooling more efficiently, when we're proactive in fixing things early, this all has a massive effect on the carbon footprint and the environment as we go forward, including smarter planning in the environment as well. Because if you build a building right in the first place, if you do it in the right way, right directions, the right wind directions, and all the weather parameters, you're going to save a fortune potentially on cooling. And if you're in a colder country, you're going to save a fortune on heating. So those are all the parameters that you can test and try out. So huge effect on the environment, for the greater good using digital twins.
Martin, that sounds really fascinating. But what are the challenges in building this?
That's a great question, because certainly if you think about the diversification, the different data types we need to make sense of it, to build a twin model, it is quite daunting for many people in the beginning. And so, what we've done in Presight is we built what we call our IntelliCity platform, which allows information to be collected from buildings, from the IoT sensors, from the environment sensors, from the streets and things like this. So when you can collect that information much easier, you're already on the way to building that digital twin. So first you essentially were going to get to the smart city, the command and control level, but very quickly to get those business and government results that you're looking for, you want to build your twin on top of that. So data is everything, both from the past, both from now, and being able to predict into the future. And so coming back to our intelligence platform again, we said, well, when we can bring that, we can route it to the right people. But the real key challenge as well, is really like, how do people agree to share? Because, a city is not one thing. It could have 50 different government agencies that are involved in running the whole of a city, right? So that then comes back to, how do I encourage everyone to share information that's needed to run a city much more holistically, and build those digital twins? So that's really, it's a people challenge as well.
Absolutely.
It's a policy challenge. Technology-wise, we've put together an amazing array of software that allows that to happen. But it'll always be a little bit around the stakeholder management.
And I just wanted to interrupt there because I think it allows me to ask you the question, the data collecting and data sharing, of course, it begs the question of data privacy and data protection. And how can that be built into the model?
Yeah. So I think, to be clear, when we talk about data privacy, so when we're talking about IoT sensors and things like this in the street, this is not so much around necessarily the privacy side, but it is around security, right? So if we're basing, sort of actions on information coming in from sensors, if we get the wrong information, like, this is a hypothetical scenario, but imagine some cyber hack could set off all the fire alarms in a building, or shut down all the things that you see in those kind of movies, where someone comes in with a headset and some guru and shuts down a city or an elevator or something like this. So, of course, security always comes first. And, there are a number of different techniques about how we secure devices, how we secure what we call data at rest and data in transit as it's being moved. And I probably don't have time to go into all the different techniques, but such as zero trust technologies. But we look at all of that aspect of what does it take to secure important data that drives decisions from end to end.
And does that also address the data privacy in the respect of the different government departments being happy to share their information between themselves for this type of planning?
And I think that's a great question. In like the 20 years that I've been doing this, it always has come down a little bit to what is okay to share, what is not okay to share. And certain policies and regulations, compliances doesn't allow that. But remember, the goal is that the smarter city comes from more sharing. So there are a number of different techniques that we use, such as federated learning, where we don't necessarily need to take all the information, we can just take the results of certain queries. So a number of different ways that people allow and preserve their data security, whilst also delivering results that the city needs to make smarter decisions for a more livable city.
Now, Martin, with your international experience and also your insight to the UAE here, what makes this particular environment really exciting for Presight to exist and for this technology to go to the next level?
I think there's a lot of things to be excited about here, because in the last few years we talk about AI like it's new, but it's been around decades, right? But what I think is now is it's really surfaced up and everyone can get the feel of it using generative AI, for example. So that really has been the big change, right? In the way that the data's put together, the way we can use generative AI, the way we can interact. This is really the big change that we're seeing. And, we expect cities to evolve now very, very fast. And something I didn't speak to, I talk about IoT, Internet of Things, but you've seen what's been happening in the news. Robots are coming.
And my final question to you, Martin, would you class yourself as an AI optimist or an AI pessimist?
Oh, wow. I don't think I've been asked that one before. I think I'm an AI optimist, right? I mean, like back in the 90s, what would the internet do to everyone, right? So it also has pluses and minuses from the different people's perspectives. On the whole, definitely I'm an optimist for AI. If it's nothing more than being able to ask GPT some quick, smart questions so that I don't have to look it all up all the time. So yeah, absolutely. I think AI is going to bring tremendous advances for us, for individuals, for families, for communities, for cities, and for the country and the planet itself.
Martin, there's so much more we could explore with you, but for now, with your optimism and all your insights, I thank you. And I say, come back, please, to G42 on air and give us more insights in the future. Thank you so much for your time, Martin.
Thank you. So looking forward to it.
And thank you for joining us. Please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and see you for the next episode of G42 On Air.